Welcome to the Traveller 2025 Mayday event. I'm your host, Frank Succardi of CyborgPrime Games. My guest today is Mr. Martin Dougherty, a prolific writer for Traveller since 1994. Welcome, Martin.
Hello.
Why don't you give us a brief introduction? Tell us who you are and what you do with Traveller.
I write words. Quite a lot of words, apparently. Been involved with Traveller since the GDW days, and I've written for every... let's just do that again. And I've written for every edition since. I've published quite a lot of landmark products, and I'm still at it, whether you like it or not.
Well, thanks for joining us at the Mayday event. I sure appreciate your participation, so thanks again for returning. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you, number one, you don't have to, well, without repeating like your origin story, because we have that from last year, why don't you just give us the highlights of like how you got involved in gaming and how you got hooked into Traveller?
I'm pretty sure Traveller was my second RPG. My first, of course, was D&D Basic. My sister got given a basic set for Christmas in 1983, which was immediately handed to me to figure out how to play it. And so I started out GMing from day one. And I met some people and I played some games. And then one of the gamers, a guy called Stephen Field, who I'm still in contact with, basically said he got this game called Traveller and would we like to play it? And we played it. I liked it. The rest, as they say, is history. Mm-hmm. As for D&D, it fell by the wayside. I think I played my last D&D game sometime in the late 1980s. Traveller just interested me more. Traveller and RuneQuest. Mm-hmm. But I do remember I GM'd or refereed from day one, and I had no idea how to be a player. I knew what was going on, and I moved the pieces, as it were. And then I played my first game, which my sister ran. And there's me and a guy I knew from school called David Cutter. And we were playing these two sort of heroes, stomping around this D&D world, doing hero stuff. And I had no idea. And I can remember being frustrated because I didn't know what was going on. I wasn't the GM. I didn't know. And I just could not get into this until we got into a fight with some lizard men. And I suddenly decided, you know what? I'm going to pick one of them up and throw him at the other lizard men and knock them over. And I made an epically good skill roll or strength roll, and I succeeded, and I could imagine this happening. And that was the moment. That was the point where I got gaming. Like, I can imagine doing that, and that was awesome. Let's find some more awesome to do. Mm-hmm. And I don't play that particular game anymore, but those moments where you're just sort of imagining these amazing scenes, that's always fascinated me.
Do you have a similar aha moment for Traveller?
The very first Traveller game I played, I remember finding a Gauss rifle sort of lying around on the deck in a derelict ship, and the gravity was off. And I remember grabbing this Gauss rifle and using the recoil of the Gauss rifle to propel myself across the room so that I could grab the work robot, which for some reason was called Smedley. I don't know why, but I remember that from 1983 or 4. And getting the robot, because it was attached to the deck and we weren't, to tow me out of the compartment where the gravity had failed. Only the robot really wasn't functioning very well, and it was going far too fast. So at this point, I was zipping through this internal compartment of this spaceship, shooting a Gauss rifle one-handed at people while being towed by a robot called Smedley. Kind of like that.
So then you decided to make a career of it, or how did you get involved in how did you kind of go from that to writing Traveller stuff?
I've always written. I've always wanted to write. And in 1984, it was the golden age of the photocopied fanzine. And I sent an article to a fanzine with a circulation of about, 4 people. There's a reference there if you want to look for it. And I sent this article in about some stuff from my RuneQuest campaign that I thought other people would be interested in. And it was published. And it never occurred to me that that was in any way unusual. So I just sent things to fanzines and then magazines. And somewhere down the line, I became somebody who was a published writer. It never occurred to me that that was difficult. I mean, it was. But I just did it. It's my nature.
So you just you love Traveller and you just wanted to write about it, so you did. And
yes,
how did that turn into kind of being roped in as a not roped in, but like how did that lead to being a long-term travel? Are you a contract writer, would you say, or like you're just okay?
Well, what happened was I, for many years, used to say, if I want to play it, I'll write it. And I would just write whatever I wanted to play. I invented a general system, which is actually based on basic role-playing, RuneQuest.
Yeah.
And I just wrote whatever I wanted. And then, for whatever reason, I decided to buy one of the Traveller New Era books. And I thought, this is really good. This is a really interesting setting. I'm interested. And I bought one every week. Every time we went to Newcastle, I bought one in one of the game shops in Newcastle. And I just got interested. So it was naturally, for me, completely normal to send. I wrote a story and I sent it to GDW. And I sort of said, you might want this. And I pitched them a novel, which they agreed to. Unfortunately, they were in the final days at that point, and it never got published. But they accepted a number of my pieces, and I guess it just didn't occur to me not to. And then when the next version of Traveller appeared, I just sort of put myself forward because that's normal, right? And I've been involved since. I mean, Traveller obviously isn't my only field of endeavour. It's just that I'm an inveterate writer and it's something I know about. So it naturally followed that I would offer. And here we are.
What was your first printed Traveller thing?
The very first, we had stuff accepted, but it never got published. And it got published later, so maybe that doesn't count. The very first actually published piece was, I think, the Kid Car Incident, which was me and Neil Fryer. Was a little adventure based on. It's basically Much Ado About Nothing in space.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it starts off with a bunch of people, sort of triumphantly returning from hunting down pirates, but then they get involved in a whole bunch of what I can only describe as noble nonsense. The post-success celebrations go a bit wrong, and everybody's at each other's throats, and everybody's just being self-important. And it's a story about what happened after you won.
All right, cool. And so after that, you were like, okay, well, I'll just keep doing this.
Yeah. I mean, I write for money. That's what I do for a living.
Sure.
I've had a day job and I didn't like it. So this is something I knew about. And when Steve Jackson Games started publishing, we approached them, me and Neil, and said, yeah, we'll write for you. And we did the first 2 source books for GURPS Traveller. I don't think I've worked with Neil since. It's not for a bad reason. It's just things happened. But that meant that when the next version came along, we were automatically approached. I was automatically approached. This would be T20, Quick Link, and I remember Hunter Gordon had said, "We need somebody to write some introductory fiction. We could do a competition. We could do this. We could do that." And Mark Miller said, "No, just hire that guy." Which worked out reasonably well. I was hired, and weirdly, there was a rate of pay offered, and then they suddenly said, "Yeah, we're going to double it because it's you. We're going to double it." And so I became pivotal to that edition, and since then, I'm well established. I can actually produce content, so I got picked up by Mongoose as a guy who could write for their books.
Cool. Quick Link. I think that I asked you this last year. Were they the ones who put out Grip?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was the introductory short story for Grip that got me hired.
For folks that don't know, Grip was like a proto VTT before VTTs existed, and they had a Traveller rule set. It's very cool.
I totally didn't understand what any of that was about. I'm a technophobe, but for me it was a case of write us a Traveller story. Okay, there you go. I can do that. I don't need to understand. Just tell me what you want. Yeah, cool. I did that at Mark Miller's recommendation, and it worked out pretty well.
Would you say you've written for every Traveller edition since you started writing for Traveller in 1994? Yes.
Okay. I did a little bit for T4, Imperium Games, GURPS Traveller, the QLI T20, and Grip. Though writing a story that isn't really about the game doesn't really count, but I'm going to claim it. Okay. And we did some stuff for Comstar Games. We did Traveller Hero. We did the Avenger, my own company's stuff, and then Mongoose. So yeah, I think I've written for every edition other than Classical.
All right, cool.
I have written Classic stuff, but it was long after Classic was not current.
I hear you. Okay. And so, that gets us kind of into what you've been up to since the last time we've seen you. So, what have you been up to since the last time we've spoke?
As far as Traveller goes, we're still in the middle of the Fifth Frontier War. We are literally, as we speak, right now, in the middle. I'm about to do the last product of the first half. So obviously that's been pretty much all my output. The Fifth Frontier War is a very, very big subject, and by the time we've finished, I'm counting on fingers and thumbs here, but I'm thinking we've got something like 7 major source books and 14. It might be 17 adventure, campaign type adventure. So it's huge, and I'm right in the middle of that.
Wow. What kinds of source books? What should people expect to find in these campaigns and source books?
Well, each of the source books looks at an aspect. So we have the original Fifth Frontier War overview book, and then we have one about the naval fleets and one about the land forces, and there's 2 others which at this moment, for the life of me, I can't remember what they're about, but I totally will be writing them. Sorry. One of them is about the peripheral stuff that we couldn't get in the first 2. So the Darians, the Sword Worlders, all the peripheral stuff. And then there's the big one at the end, which has some surprises. And then each of the adventures deals with aspects of what happens. So there's an adventure about the big fleet actions. There's an adventure about the ground actions. There's an adventure about a bunch of people just stuck in the middle of it all. Actually, a few adventures about that, because such a big upheaval, you're going to get people, travelers perhaps, stuck in the middle of a complete disaster. So, for example, Opening Moves is about a bunch of adventurers who just happen to be in the spaceport when it's attacked, and they spend most of the adventure just running away. They need to get to safety. Safety turns out not to be all that safe because, major interstellar war.
Hmm. Right. So how long until you say you're halfway through? So how long have you been working on it then, and how long until it's done, do you think?
It feels like I've been working on this all my life. It's become it's such a big project that it does feel like I've been on with it forever. But I think we're about 2 years to maybe 18 months into the writing, and I think we've got the same to go. I remember jokingly saying at the beginning of this, well, that's me employed for the next 5 years. And I think it'll come out a bit like that.
All right.
I think we might get it done in 18 months more. But then, of course, the publication lag means you'll be seeing the books beyond that. But certainly we're nowhere near finished.
So you were tapped for this project because, well, for one reason, you've written so much Traveller stuff, but you also have a very specific skill set.
Yeah, I write actual real-world history books, so I know how conflict happens, and I know how it affects people. And I have actually worked in the defense industry, which is not nearly as exciting as it sounds, but I basically was in the procurement end. So I know how a decision made 20 years ago in a meeting affects the battle you're fighting right now. I don't think there was anybody else really so well qualified to figure out how the Fifth Frontier War would go. I was the obvious choice, and so far so good.
Mm-hmm. And so Travelers, well, Mongoose has been kind of toying with open-ended canon mechanic. Can you talk about that?
That might be my fault.
Explain yourself, sir.
Well, there was a certain amount of back and forth, and we were asking, because one of the questions is, why is there a Fifth Frontier War? And when the Fifth Frontier War entered Traveller canon, nobody knows what the reason was. Now, with changes that have been made, the wave of crazy and all that sort of thing, there's a sort of logic to it. They might want to clear their flank before the wave hits them, so that makes sense. But nobody ever actually told me what the original reason was. What they did tell me was, write the story of what actually happens. So I went back and I said, if they were going to do this, how would they do it? And I came up with this this idea that they would do so, but I honestly couldn't tell you if they'd win or not with that plan. I wrote the best plan I could come up with from the Zordani point of view, and then I wrote the best plan the best response the Imperials might make. And there was some discussion about this, and we eventually realized between us that this could go either way. And it could go really, really heavily either way. Wouldn't it be cool if we didn't know how it ended? And if we could build something into the late campaign in the last source book where you can figure out how it goes. You can decide what the outcome of the Fifth Frontier War is based on looking back at what your travellers did in the adventures. Decisions they made that might not have seemed all that important, might actually have affected people or done things. The Admiral listened to what you said and made this choice. Oh dear, that meant he didn't send reinforcements when he could have. What if the adventures you play dictated the outcome? And Mongoose and Mark Miller rather liked this idea. So at this point, there is no fixed canon ending for the Fifth Frontier War. It depends entirely on what your travellers do. And I have to make that work somehow.
And so how are, if it can come out either way or any way, how are future products going to be able to dovetail against that?
I don't know. There are ideas on the floor, and I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say about that at this point. There is a concept in place that will make that absolutely fine, but at the end of the day, it's your campaign. If the Fifth Frontier War ends up with the Jordani in Corridor sector, that's your campaign. If it ends up with an independent Republic of Regina and the Imperium being distant and trying to chart a path into uncertain future, that's your campaign. And this is what we agreed. Let's just let the players dictate the future, which is totally scary as a game designer, because players, yikes.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm always interested in clever game mechanics and things, and I think this is fascinating a way of, I don't want to say, kind of giving Canon flexibility and while kind of having backwards compatibility in the future. From what I understand of the system from speaking to, other Mongoose people, it's pretty clever.
It's very rare that anyone calls me clever, but we're doing our best. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're trying to just allow people to dictate how their game universe turns out. What better reward? You can have piles of credits, you can have the best ship, you can get psionic training, whatever. But what better reward for playing in a game when you see the future play out the way you shaped it, and what greater punishment seeing the universe play out the way you shaped it by that dumb decision you made back there.
Right. All right, cool. All right, so tell us some more about what you've been up to. You recently published a book on the Ukraine war.
Yeah, I write actual history books as well. And I did a book about the war in Ukraine, which came out almost a year ago today. So we might be doing a second edition sometime soon. But yeah, I've done that. And there's been a whole bunch of fencing related stuff. And a couple of mainstream publishing books that have nothing whatsoever to do with gaming. I've just done a book on samurai armor, of all things. Which I know about as much as you do about, and it turned out it's really interesting. It's a really complicated subject. It's really fascinating. It's a very, very clever piece of technology that isn't done the same way as Europeans did it. So I found it interesting to do that. There are rumors that I might be doing something similar in the future, but right now I just don't know. My editor, my mainstream publishing editor, tends to be very vague about projects for legal reasons until I've agreed to do them, and then I find out it's not anything like what I thought it was going to be. Such is the life of a freelancer.
How do you normally work as a freelancer? Do you pitch an idea, or do ideas come to you from a publisher, or both? Or
with a certain amount. Most of my freelancing work, somebody will contact me and say, "You seem to be an expert at this. Can you do this for us? Here's what we're paying." I have reached a point with one of them where sometimes I pitch ideas and then they take them to the book fairs and say, "Well, we've got an expert who could do this for you." But mostly it's me doing what I'm paid for. They decide what they want me to do, and then they tell me, and I do it. But there's a certain amount of two-way street about it, because I've been working with one particular client for 20 years now. And so we do have a certain amount of back and forth. How about this? That's a good idea. I'll talk to the commissioning editor. But mostly I just do what I'm told. Ish.
All right, cool. And then you also have a interest in fencing and dueling?
Yeah, I'm president of the British Federation for Historical Swordplay,
Cool.
which is one of the HEMA bodies in Britain. And I do quite a lot of events. We've got one next week, which is all about the dueling weapons, the small sword and the rapier. I'll be teaching all over the country over the next few months. Basically, I teach people to stab each other.
Mm-hmm. What is it that captures your interest, or what's your favorite? What I want to say, like, what's your favorite aspect? I mean, obviously, if you're sponsoring events and teaching people, there must be something about it that you're passionate about. Is there a certain aspect, or you just love everything about it, or the finesse, maybe, or the romance? What's it's not romantic to be stabbed, I suppose, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I got my first fencing lesson in October 1987, and I guess I just loved it. One of the things I liked is when it's right, it's absolutely right. It's very, very, it's confrontational, but it's also almost cooperative. I do this, my opponent does that, I do this, and I perform it well, and I succeed. And there's a satisfaction to be had. And I used to have these two students at the university club who were they were from Hong Kong, and their English wasn't very good, and they did not want to compete. But what they just loved doing the lessons, and it was a joy to watch them trying to perfect this skill just for the sake of the skill. And certainly that's always interested me. To perform perfectly while someone's trying to stab you in the face it's quite difficult. So I've always enjoyed that. I've always enjoyed, obviously, I like to win. I'm a bit competitive. I do like to win. But to win by being just plain better than somebody, to win through skill and paying off the work, I just love all of that. But I also kind of just like winning, and I like stabbing people.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, it's you versus an opponent, and it's the decisions you make and the skill you have.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody can say to you, "Oh, well, we lost because you didn't pass the ball at the right moment." It's like, no, we lost because I did something stupid and got killed.
Right.
And I just love that.
Yeah. I like that too. I like winning, but I also like an evenly matched, struggle between two people who are evenly matched. I don't like to see people just get stomped.
Yeah, exactly.
I like to see,
there's nothing to be gained from poning the noobs. I don't know if she says that anymore, but there you go. But if you come up against somebody who's good and you have to outthink them or out-technique them, and you have to solve the problem that is the opponent, fencing is very much an intellectual activity as well as a physical one. And that just fascinates me. I don't want to say chess with swords because it's hackneyed, but it is. It actually chess with swords. You have to be technically good, but you also have to apply the technique in a thoughtful, careful manner. And if you get beat, well, there's something to think about.
Mm-hmm. So, so between that and your consulting work and stuff, where do you find time to do all this writing? Sounds like you're pretty busy.
Yeah. Well, the writing's my day job, so I'm at my desk all day, every day. In my bespoke office, which my father built for me a few years ago, with all my books. And I'm here all day, every day doing work. And then when I'm finished, I'm finished.
You stay focused on one project, or do you just write a little bit about this until you're like you need to take a mental break, and then you work on something else while your brain refreshes, and then back to the first thing, or do you just stay focused on the first thing until it's done?
Well, I should. That's exactly what I should do. I should focus, but I don't. So what I'll do is I'll work on a thing, and I know how to make any project the most interesting thing in the world. Work on something else. So inevitably there'll be this thing floating around saying, but look at me. You want to work on me, don't you? And it's quite difficult to say, no, I have to finish this first. But ultimately, that's what it is to be a professional. I know people who've got a lot of started projects who've never finished anything. You can't do that. You know, you really do have to grind through and get stuff done. But that doesn't mean you can't distract yourself for a bit or make yourself a promise that if I can get to 3 p.m. working on this, then I can do an hour editing that. But yeah, you really do in this industry, you do need to focus on what you're doing. Otherwise, you just end up with a whole lot of bits and pieces that's not finished. And at the end of the day, delivering is what writers do. If you want to make money, that's what you have to do.
About how long does it take you to get into like writing flow?
Oh, somewhere between ages and forever. Terrible. I sometimes if I have what me and an old friend used to call a writing bug, I can't do anything else. You know, I've got a writing bug. I have to do this, and I will not be happy unless I'm typing. And yet there's other days where it's really, really difficult to get anything done. And those are the days where you find out really who you are. Are you somebody who's fiddling about, or are you somebody who's going to get this done? It's one of the problems you have with people who, and you know, I've been an editor, so I know about this. They come to you with a great idea, and the question is, are you excited by this idea, or are you prepared to deliver this idea? And that is something entirely different.
Right. Good point. So it kind of gets us to like, what are you up to these days? Still working on the Fifth Frontier War? Like, what are you working on right now on the Fifth Frontier War? Are you
right now? Sorry, I'm just going to look at my notepad here. I'm on page 103. I've just completed page 103 of a 128-page adventure called Consular Envoy, which, fair to say, didn't go where I thought it would. Because when I started writing it, I had this idea for this quite big, broad, you'll do this, and you'll do this, and you'll do this. And then while I was writing it, I realized, no, you won't. It's a lot more focused than that. And I've ended up exploring a couple of cultures which are quite different from the usual, through the eyes of people, actually through the eyes of a Jordani crew, who are themselves not the same as what the setting normally shows. And looking at these cultures through the eyes of these outsiders, well, I've learned, and I'm hoping that by playing the adventure, you might realize, yeah, actually, a lot of the things we think are normal are kind of weird. So the basic idea is you're aboard a vessel that's carrying an envoy. You're out in this area looking for allies, and oh dear, everything's gone horribly wrong, which I think we can all assume would happen. And you're suddenly having to make decisions way above your pay grade. Quite possibly speak for the entire consulate and just get yourselves home alive. But what if there's an opportunity to do more than that, to do something important? And really, it's about a bunch of no hopers thrust to the fore. You know, trying to do what is either right or won't get them into trouble. But also just trying to learn about the universe, because they've grown up in this very specific society and everything's different now. And what does that mean? Also, you get to blow stuff up and do adventure stuff because it's a game. So, you know, let's have some fun.
Right. What's your writing process like? Do you brainstorm a bunch of ideas and then go, okay, this is a good bunch of ideas? Let's make something out of this. Or do you have an idea that do you just like dwell on it for a while until something kind of gels in your brain and then you start? Or where do you find inspiration, and how do you get started and organized when you do your writing?
So many questions. Inspiration tends to come from real world history and trying to put myself in other people's shoes and say, what would that look like if I was an ancient Sumerian coppersmith and I had received substandard grade copper? What would that mean? And trying to think about stuff from the point of view of other people. By the way, that I don't know how relevant that is, but that's a thing right now on the internet. So to some extent, there's that. Just trying to look at everyday stuff. I guess a bit like Nathan Pyle does. The guy does the cartoons with the aliens, where he points out completely normal things in a way that makes them look weird. Mm-hmm. And what if I was a Martian who landed tomorrow looking at this? I'd be baffled. So I am inspired by real world history. I'm inspired by things I know happened. What I try not to do is just, I'll just tell the story of the Greek city-states. I don't want to rip anything off wholesale. But equally, I want to look at things that happen through the point of view of people who aren't us and ask, what would you make of that? So in terms of the inspiration, it comes from all over the place. I am guilty of borrowing ideas from real world history because you can't make this stuff up. The things that have happened in our world, really, especially recently, without wanting to get political, there's things that have happened that if you'd made them up, nobody believed them. So there's that, and I'm always very interested in accounts of, for example, people who won the Congressional Medal of Honor or the Victoria Cross, the things that they did under extreme circumstances. So that's what people are capable of, and it all just goes in there, and it all filters. As far as the actual process goes, there's quite a lot of having an idea, sitting down at the keyboard and starting to type, and then realizing, nope, this isn't going there. And to some extent, and I maybe shouldn't admit to this, I sometimes write game products like I ran games in 1985. As in, I've got an idea for where this is going. It's all going, everybody's gone off in a different direction and I need to cope. And I sometimes find myself writing in an almost scatterbrained sort of way, where you suddenly realize this is not going where I need it to, and I need to improvise. So as an author, what I am is a harassed GM, a harassed referee, who's realizing the players are not going where they want you to, and this isn't going to happen the way you think, and let's just run with it. And I can safely tell you that there are several products I've written that did not go anywhere near what I thought they would do when I wrote the outline. But I do write outlines. An outline is a starting point, and then your players find exciting new ways to do violence to it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's my process.
I was going to ask you, outline or seat of the pants?
Real men use outlines.
I agree.
Always write outlines, and then come back to your outline and update it when you've realized it's just nonsense and things are going different. But yeah, you really always need to keep what I call the guilt document, where you keep the notes of, I planned this, but it's obvious when we've got to this point that it's not going to go there. So what we need to do instead is we do this other thing, but keep the guilt on the page and remind yourself that, in fact, right now, I'm editing a novel I wrote, and there are 3 chapters in there that happened because I suddenly realized the outline says the characters would do this, but they bloody wouldn't. They're just too stupid to do that. That's the obvious, sensible thing to do, but they're frightened and stupid. So there's 3 entire chapters where they go off and do something entirely different because they just won't do the sensible thing. And this is what happens when you're working any project. You come to understand it, you come to feel it, and you realize that wouldn't happen. And at that point, you have to revise your outline, and you have to be willing to do absolute violence to it, because this is what I started out intending, but it's obviously no longer appropriate.
Now that you've got to know the characters better, I mean, and know what they would do under the different circumstances, so now it's going to be a little bit different. So I think I'll hang around on some like author forums, and there's a big discussion between outlining or just hashing stuff out, and I'm a proponent for outlining. I think what people do is they outline, and then they forget that that's a living document thing, and that needs to be changed, because as you go, you're going to come up with better ideas. Oh, that sounds more clever, or oh, that sounds more interesting than my original idea, or oh, it makes more sense if their boat sinks and I wasn't planning on the boat to sink, So, that kind of stuff, I think kind of. And if you keep a document that has like version control on it, you can go back and look at like what your original plan was and what it turned out to be.
You can go back and laugh at what naive, innocent you thought was going on.
I was so cute back then at the beginning of the book.
I mean, what I'm editing right now is just, there's a point where I wrote a sentence and it's at this point I'm in this character's mindset, and we can go that way, which is what everyone thinks we're supposed to do. But I want to go that way. And I'm doing that. And his companion's saying, why are we doing this? Why have you turned left? What are you doing? And it's like, don't want to. And he's not speaking to his companion at this point. He's telling me. That character is telling me I'm not doing what the author says. I'm doing what I would do. And it's your job to narrate it. And it kind of took over. But to me, this happens when you work on something. You have an idea of how you think it'll be. By the time you get 2/3 of the way through, inevitably there's that moment where you realize this is really contrived the way it's written, or we could just go with what's actually happening. And that's what I try and do. Which is why several of the adventures I've written recently do not resemble the outline, because I realized you'd get to that point and you just wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do what the author would expect you to do. You'd do what a bunch of people in the spaceship would do.
Good point. That gets me to the new kind of campaign style that Mongoose is kind of toying with. Matthew explained it to me as Space Truckers.
Space
do you
Truckers.
have any light to shed on that project?
Yeah, Matthew tossed the idea in my direction, and I absolutely loved it, I have to say. It's quite a light-hearted idea. So those incredibly cheesy 1970s films, Convoy, Smokey and the Bandit, that sort of thing. A bunch of space truckers who are sort of skirting the edge of the law, but they're not bad guys. They're just at odds with law enforcement, and just doing a bunch of slightly sketchy stuff. And law enforcement's trying to shut them down and all the rest of it. And I absolutely love that, because I've seen Convoy a couple of times at least. Once when I was very young, maybe when it first came out, and I just sort of loved that. So, can we do this in space? Yes, we can. So yeah, I'm quite enthused by this idea, and I've been given it. I can either do another Fifth Frontier War book, or I can do that, and I'm pretty excited by that. I think we can do some fun things. Though the brief does say it's Convoy, not Duel. And if you've seen both those films, you know what I mean.
What's your opinion on that?
It's a different style. It requires a setting, which I found a place I can set it, where the flavour's a little bit different. And it requires, I think, it'll require the players to buy in to this is fun rather than power gaming their way to victory.
Mm-hmm.
But if you approach it with the right mindset, I think we can have a lot of fun with this. We can do rubber duck in space.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm quite looking forward to tackling it. But at the moment, what it is a bunch of ideas, and every one of them makes me laugh. It's just I don't know how to tie them together yet.
Mm.
So by the time you read it, it'll all make sense. But right now, it's just a bunch of stuff that amuses me.
Mm.
How do you perform a bootlegger reverse in a scout courier?
Right. Is there a speed limit in space? I mean, maybe the truckers are overloaded with, overloaded tonnage. They're skirting the laws of how much you can haul. I don't know.
Let me get my notepad. Keep talking. I'm probably going to steal any ideas I get. Yeah, we do have this idea, this bunch of sort of quite backwater systems, and the people who enforce the law there don't have big pictures to worry about. They don't have to worry about the Aslan invading or anything like that. So they focus on really, really petty stuff, like their stupid schemes. I'm looking at you, Boss Hog.
Mm-hmm.
And just, I want everything to be really, really trivial.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you've been done because your navigational beacon's not running properly, and it was obviously a bogus stop because they're trying to interfere with you running this cargo in, and that sort of thing. Basically the inspiration is coming from the Dukes of Hazzard and that sort of thing, and this sort of almost respectful, good-natured opposition. Which is quite different to your typical Traveller campaign, which one of the things that just amuses me so much about it. But we have to figure out a mechanic for how you do silly things in order to escape from the cops. Do you pull a bootlegger reverse? Do you jump over the bridge?
I was going to say, how are you going to maybe you can jump your ship across or literally jump. You have to jump through a dangerous space or something. I don't know. Yeah, that sounds fun. I like this. I like tongue-in-cheek kind of humorous stuff. I also like to be serious, but I mean, I don't want to do space work or space job after I did my real job during the day. So I'm always looking for, something fun, something maybe a little silly. I have my character that I play in my every other week Traveller game is kind of like if there was a transporter accident between Dr. Smith and Dr. McKay, and you had Dr. Smith McKay, who's like doubly annoying, and everybody's been a good sport about it. But I'm kind of comical, but it's lighthearted and hopefully not annoying to my mates.
When we played the Traveller adventure, my character accidentally became a porn star because he was recorded in a space brothel, and later on we discovered that the cargo we were hauling was a bunch of basically DVDs of my movies. And we decided to run with this, and it was like, well, here he is, Kostos, the star of these movies, and he became a sort of minor interstellar celebrity for terrible reasons.
Infamous.
And everywhere we went, we're trying to do this travel adventure. There's this major conspiracy going on. There's terrible things happening, and there's the slight distraction of one of the characters being an interstellar porn star. And it was just completely stupid. But we took it and we ran with it. And it became more important than defeating the bad guys. And this is something that I'm hoping to do with Space Truckers, is take the trivialities and make them big. Just, this is your chance to do something utterly unimportant, but the people on the receiving end are pleased, and the cops are angry at you, and you've got one over on Boss Hog and all the rest of it. And basically, it's like trivial stuff in space, which is a nice change for me from a major planetary invasion and 56 million people dead this day.
Right.
So yeah,
It's a bit more lighthearted.
Looking forward to getting into that. I think it'll be fun.
And you have also some plans for some Traveller novels?
Oh yeah, I've got an agreement in place with Mongoose to do Traveller novels. So hopefully later in the year we're going to be running a Kickstarter to get them going, because there are costs involved. But it's the same deal I had in place with Mark Miller for years, and now it's with Mongoose. Early days yet, but yeah, we hope to be publishing actual official Traveller novels, and I've been given Gateway Domain, so the whole region facing the Kukri, as a playground for that, where I can pretty much do what I want. So I'm looking forward to that if I get a moment away from all the other stuff.
So do you have an outline for that, or any kind of like general idea that kind of segues us into the upcoming business? What are your plans for the next year? What's you're going to work on the novels, finish up the Frontier War?
All of the above, I hope. As far as the novels go, the idea is the Deep Night Corporation, who you might be familiar with, have been doing some stuff in Gateway Domain. They've been contracting to the Imperial government as long-range intelligence gatherers, because everyone's worried about the Lords of Thunder. And they end up sending this junior official, just go and pick up a ship. It's sort of been abandoned at a starport. Go and pick it up. But it turns out to have really, really sensitive data on board, and everybody's after it. And this guy realizes he's been sent. He's basically a patsy. He's a scapegoat for why they lost this ship, which leads him to ask the question: why did they lose this ship? Why is it sitting on a backwater starport and not? Why didn't it complete its mission? And he wants answers. So the idea is that he and his very dysfunctional crew need to move through Gateway Domain and find out just why he was set up and what the Imperials were trying to do, or what the Deep Night Corporation was trying to do in Gateway Domain. And I want to poke into some of the mysteries that were tossed out when we did Gateway to Destiny and stuff like that. So finally providing answers to some of the questions that were asked then. It's a story I really, really want to tell. I just have all these other things I have to do first.
All right, cool. What about source books or campaigns, adventures? You got any of those on the back burner that they're cooking, or?
The next Fifth Frontier War book is the Land campaign, which is a ground combat based scenario, which is all about the fall of land. And that's canonical. That happens whether you like it or not. But how it happens might affect events elsewhere. So it's all about a bunch of people just stuck on land as everything's falling apart around them. That's quite an interesting thing. How does ground warfare happen in the 57th century? So you'll get to see it from far too close.
Right.
And then after that, we're getting towards the pivotal moments of the Fifth Frontier War, the point where the Imperials' internal politics really has to get sorted out, because they're hamstrung at the beginning by internal politics. So we're looking at there's an adventure called Favourites at Court we've got planned, where it's just people who are in the inner circle of the great nobility, and what they see and what they get sent to do. And there's an opportunity there for travelers to make a choice. It'll cost you, but you could do the right thing if you wanted, or you can make a ton of money. And really, what this is based on real world stuff that I know about. This is how empires come apart. How internal politics becomes externalized and vice versa, and it becomes, yes, but we could actually do better at fighting the war, but it'll cost my political master, and I've been told to do the opposite. So, do I just take the money, or do I do the right thing? And I want to explore what the price tag really is for doing the right thing, because it's so easy for people to say, well, why won't you just do the right thing? Yeah, but what's the price?
Because doing the wrong thing was so much more profitable.
Yeah, exactly. We could just go along with what the powers that be is saying, and we'll get an absolute ton of money, and it'll be great, it'll be fantastic. And if we lose 5 subsectors to the Jordani, so what? We're okay.
Mm-hmm.
But all of this plays into the idea of you get to decide how it wins, how it ends, who wins. And I quite like that idea of putting people on the front line and saying, make a decision. And then a couple of years later, it's, that decision you made. One of the most interesting moments in TV is the show Person of Interest.
I love that show. I didn't think I was going to, because I'm not big on conspiracies, but man, I love that show.
I loved that show. It was so good. Also, it had Amy Acker. But anyway, there's a point where she says, we lost the moment we chose not to kill that senator. They had a choice of murdering a guy, which would derail the bad guy's plans, but they wouldn't do it. And we lost. Now what we're fighting for is survival. And I found that really, really interesting. Just the whole sort of, you made a moral choice that was probably the right choice, but you lost the war.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to sort of put travelers in that position where maybe at the time they'll go, yeah, okay, we'll just take the money. It's great. Look at all this stuff we've got. But then when the entire imperial front collapses because of stupid decisions that were made, you get to say, well, that was us.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it's cool. So you got some time to answer some random questions?
Yeah, let's do random questions. Random questions.
Right, cool. I have my D66 table, so you can either roll or just give me some numbers.
1-6.
1-6. If you could have one psionic ability, what would you choose and why?
Fun as it would be to be a telepath, I would quite like going with awareness, because I'm pretty sure you can heal yourself. And I am really sick of back pain. As a middle-aged man, I am really sick of back pain. So I would go with something that makes my back hurt less.
All right. Good answer. All right, let's do another. Give me another number.
43.
43. What's the most unexpected plot twist you've ever experienced in a Traveller game?
The princess's big surprise, which was when, as I mentioned earlier, my character, Kostos Strinsis, who was chief engineer aboard the March Harrier, decided it would be fun to go to the brothel next door to the Starport Hotel, and got filmed, and found himself in a the porno explosion of the year, which is how I ended up being an international interstellar porn star.
All right.
It had nothing to do with the plot, but it was hilarious.
All right, let's do one more.
5-2.
52 we have. Have you ever played or run a game where an entire crew got wiped out? What happened?
No, I haven't, but I went one better. I ran an adventure. I shouldn't give this away because I'm going to use it in one of the Frontier War ideas, where the players figured out what the bad guys were up to. And because they had a certain amount of credibility with the admiral, because they'd done this and this and this, and they sent an emergency signal and said they're going to go to the missile stash that's hidden in the out system, and they're going to rob it. And they sent half the defense fleet to protect it. Meanwhile, the bad guys went to the admiral's shuttle and captured him because he was unprotected. And at the very end of the venture, I don't know whether your camera can see this, but I was sat going, as in, you have been stitched up. You are known to be the people who sent the system defense fleet off to protect something that wasn't being attacked when Admiral Matthews was kidnapped. Didn't get them wiped out. Did cause them some problems.
And we're now the interstellar pariahs.
Yeah. Then there was that time I got stitched up. The referee knew that I absolutely hated one of the other players. I mean, really, I just couldn't be bothered with him. He was very annoying. And he created a character who was basically that player, who was no longer with us, but he'd basically been kicked out of our group because he was so annoying. And I was seen on camera saying, "That's it, I'm going to kill him." And he was found dead not long afterwards. And naturally, they assumed it was me. Apparently, somebody wearing a hat like mine was seen pushing this guy out of an airlock. And I got the blame. And it was just a piece of... The referee absolutely played me because he knew I really, really hated this guy. He was so annoying. Mm-hmm. And if you're out there, Dave the Potato Man, I'm talking about you. A man with the looks and the charisma of a large potato. But he had irritated me so much that I took the opportunity to murder him in a game, only I didn't. I just kind of said things that suggested I would. And yeah, I got stitched up for that. So yeah, my hat is off to you, Neil Fryer. You got me there.
All right. Well, Martin, how is it... how do people contact you? Do you even want to be contacted? Are you lurking in various social places where comments about you could be seen?
I am not active on any of the Traveller groups. I've been actively hounded off some of them by a small number of people who were very nasty. So you won't find me on Traveller mailing list because the last time I ventured there, yikes. It's a very small number of people, but unfortunately some fans are so rabid that I once received a diatribe about how stupid I was for inventing the dandelions in Traveller Adventure. Mark Miller invented those, but for some reason I got the blame. So you won't find me there, but if you go to my website, you're quite welcome to contact me as long as you're civil. It's just that every time I raise my head, unfortunately, a small, what's the word, minority perhaps, of
Cadre.
very, very rabid people will attack me. So I stay off. But if you genuinely want to contact me, go to my website, shoot me a message. You'll find I'm actually quite not unpleasant.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. I'll put the link to your website in the description of the video so people can find it. And
can I just amplify on that?
Yeah, sure.
Occasionally, people will ask me for stuff, and I will go to a certain amount of trouble to help them out. I really don't mind, as long as you're civil. Mm-hmm. I welcome contact, as long as you're civil.
Gotcha.
But I've had some really horrible experiences, so I tend to keep my head down. But if you actually like something I wrote, we'll get along fine.
All right. Well, we've come to the end of our interview. So, Martin, thank you so much for joining us again.
You're welcome.
Fantastic. And folks, my guest today has been Martin Dougherty, writer of Traveller source material. Thanks for joining us, Martin.
You're very welcome.
And thank you, dear listener. Until next time, happy traveling. Don't fly solo through the galaxy. Click like to join our alliance. Subscribe for your crew pass, and enable notifications to never miss an encounter. This journey is fueled by my patrons. Thank you, patrons. Feel the thrill of discovery. Become a patron and join the adventure.